Hello, welcome back! In this video, I'll share with you how my husband and I raised our children, aged 5 and 6, to be trilingual in English, Mandarin and Russian. I hope it will give trilingual families out there some inspiration and motivation. Just to give you some background info, we are a trilingual family living in the UK, just outside of London. I was born in China and grew up in Hong Kong before moving to the UK in 2003. My husband is originally from Russia and lived in Australia for many years before moving to the UK about 15 years ago. Even before our first child was born, we always knew we wanted to pass our languages on to our future children. Being fluent in more than one language ourselves, we are very aware of the benefits of speaking more than one language. By the way, you might want to check out my video about the top 3 benefits of being multilingual, where I dive into this topic in more detail. So anyway, we've been on this trilingual journey since our first child was born in 2016. It's been a challenging but extremely rewarding journey, and now my mission is to help as many parents in a similar position as possible. Before we start, I want to stress that our journey is far from over. It's an ongoing process and probably will be for a very long time. Nevertheless, in this video, I'll tell you exactly what we've been doing so far to help our children become trilingual. Let's get started. Broadly speaking, as a family, we practice the one parent, one language method, also known as the OPAL method. Those of you familiar with multilingual parenting terminology might have heard of this already. But basically, in the context of trilingual families, this method typically involves one parent speaking target language A and the other parent speaking target language B, while everyone else in the wider world speaks target language C, which is also the majority language of the place where the family lives. In our case, we live in the UK, so the majority language is English. I speak to our children in Mandarin and my husband speaks to them in Russian. At this point, you might be wondering, what do you guys do when all 4 of you are having a conversation together? Well, initially the idea was for me to speak Russian as well, but over time I'd say we probably settled into using English as the common language at home when the conversation involves one or both of the kids, my husband and me. This works for us, and it seems that most trilingual families in the UK have a similar setup at home. If you are trying to raise trilingual children, I think the OPAL method is probably your best option. For us, we've realized that the key to success is, without a doubt, consistency. I don't want to go into too much detail here, but if you are interested, check out my top 5 mistakes video where I give more background information about that. But basically, before we committed to using Russian and Chinese exclusively with our first child, he would only speak to us in English. These days, we are both quite strict about speaking to our children only in our languages, even when we are out and about. We also insist on them replying to us in our languages. So if they say something to us in English, we ask them to repeat it in Russian or Chinese. For us, this approach has been super effective, and for any parents struggling to make their child speak the target language, I would really advise you to be very consistent about using the target language exclusively and to insist on your child talking to you in the target language. Remember, consistency is absolutely key to successfully raising bilingual, trilingual and multilingual children. In addition to speaking Russian and Mandarin at home, we also supplement this with language lessons and weekend school. Both our children have been going to Russian school every Saturday for several years now. They spend 3 to 4 hours there doing a variety of activities in Russian in an immersive environment, and the school also sets homework and provides additional learning material that we can look at in our own time. For us, the Russian school is really beneficial, mostly because it provides a truly immersive Russian-speaking environment for the kids. My husband's family, they all live overseas, which means that our kids wouldn't otherwise get the same level of exposure to Russian without these Saturday sessions. A few years ago, we also gave a weekend Chinese school in London a try. Our son attended that school for 2 school terms every Sunday, but to be very honest, that school was very different in the sense that it mostly catered to non-Chinese families, and I didn't feel like he was learning that much. After the school closed at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, we stopped all Chinese lessons altogether. So for almost 3 years, our children didn't have any Chinese lessons, but we did have a good learning routine at home, which I'll go into a bit more detail later. But last year, our friend recommended an online Chinese language school to us. We gave it a go, and surprisingly, the children really enjoyed the trial lesson. So since then, they've been having one 30-minute one-on-one online lesson per week, which is not a lot, but it does give them some extra exposure to a native speaking teacher. And also the school sets fun interactive homework, which the kids enjoy doing. But essentially, my advice to parents is this: you don't have to pay other people to teach your kid the target language. Language learning has to start at home. Unless you send your child to a bilingual school where they spend 6 hours a day or more immersed in the target language, just going to a language school on the weekend or having an online lesson once a week or whatever, it isn't going to help your child become bilingual or trilingual. Language acquisition has to start at home with the parents, right? But if you're doing things right at home, of course, it doesn't hurt to supplement that with language lessons or weekend school. Let's take a break for a minute. If you're enjoying this video so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel so that you'll never miss new videos, and it will really help my channel grow. Thank you so much. So now let's talk about reading and writing. This might not be relevant to every trilingual, bilingual family out there, but for us, we do want our children to learn how to read and write in our languages. If that's your goal too, establishing a consistent routine is essential. Over the course of the past 6 months or so, we've settled into the following routine. During the week from Monday to Friday, the children do homework with us for approximately an hour each day, split between a morning and an evening session. The morning session takes place just before they go to school, and the evening session is after dinner. My husband and I alternate. So for example, on Mondays, I do homework with our son in the morning while my husband sits down to study with our daughter, and in the evening we switch over. This way, both kids get more or less equal exposure to Chinese and Russian literacy work over the course of a week. I know some of you might think that this sounds like a lot of work. Well, I'm not gonna lie, it is hard work, but don't forget that we also have to fit English and maths homework into these sessions as well. And on the weekend, the kids do get a break, and during the school holidays, we're a bit less rigid about maintaining this routine. But I really think having a routine has helped our children get to a basic level of literacy in all our languages and to keep the momentum going. Now, what else do we do to give our kids a trilingual environment? We're very lucky that my mum lives just down the road from us and we see her at least once a week. My mother is in fact highly multilingual herself if you count the Chinese dialects as separate languages, which they kind of are because a large number of these dialects are not mutually intelligible. Anyway, so my mum's first language is the Shanghainese dialect, but she also speaks Mandarin, Cantonese and English. When we are with the kids, we all speak Mandarin together, so that's an additional source of language exposure for the children, which is fantastic. I'm also friends with a small group of Chinese mums whom I used to work with many years ago, and we arrange to meet up every now and then. It's great for our kids to see their mums, interact with other people in Mandarin, as it kind of makes them see the point of using the language. We also see my cousin's family a few times a year. I really need to make a separate video about this whole linguistic interaction with my cousin's family, as it's a really interesting story in itself. So my cousin's from Shanghai and lives in Berlin, Germany with her German husband and their son. when we are together, it's super beneficial for all three children in terms of learning Mandarin, because they not only hear their mums talking Chinese a lot, but they are also forced to use Mandarin to communicate with one another, as that's the only language they have in common. Well, I'm sure one day my cousin's child will learn to speak English and things will be different then, but for now, they have to communicate in Mandarin. So, if you have family, relatives, or friends around who speak your target language, leverage that to give your kids extra exposure to the language. Now, before we finish, I want to give all parents out there a key piece of advice. Do not fall into the perfection trap. Having watched this video, you may have the impression that our kids are perfectly fluent in English, Russian, and Mandarin. But let me tell you, that's far from the truth. While they can certainly communicate in these languages, the pronunciation and fluency in Russian and Chinese are far from what you would call perfect. And we are okay with that. I've met parents who told me that they've given up with this whole bilingual, trilingual thing because it's just too hard. Their kids will never speak the home language perfectly and they'll just stop speaking it when they start school anyway, so what's the point? And so on and so forth. But I'm here to tell you that as long as you don't give up, your child will make progress, and they don't have to speak a second or third language perfectly to reap the benefits of being bilingual or trilingual, or to communicate with others. Try not to compare yourself to other families. I know it's hard. For example, just last weekend, we met up with our Chinese friends, and my friend's daughter speaks flawless Mandarin. And I sort of felt bad that my kid's Chinese isn't nearly as good. But you know what? Everyone's circumstances are different. Be proud of what you've achieved. Be proud of what your child has achieved. Perfection doesn't exist. And in any case, language learning is a lifelong journey. And the important thing is to keep learning and using the language every day. Whew, this turned out to be quite a long video. Anyway, I hope you found today's content helpful. And if you want more tips and advice and a step-by-step guide on how to raise bilingual, trilingual, or multilingual children, do check out my book Bilingual and Trilingual Parenting 101. It's jam-packed with practical tips and advice that you can implement from day one. And before we go, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to this channel so you won't miss any future content. Thank you for watching and see you soon!